Shall we get going? Welcome. I'm Josie. I'm a partner at EY in people consulting, and I spend a lot of my time working with organisations thinking about the future of work, the future of skills, future of talent. So it's lovely to have you all in the room today. Well done for making it, because it was quite a challenge. Welcome to all the people at home. I hope you are comfortable. So I'm just going to move my bag, otherwise I'll fall over. I am going to talk a little bit about the future of work, what that means for you and your organisation, and how, I also thought it might be good for us to think a bit about how you might shape the future of work as well. Because this is all about levelling up, taking power back to ourselves and thinking about building the future of work that we want to work in. So I'm going to talk for about probably 15-20 minutes, and then we can have Q&A and discussion between ourselves. So I guess the thing that I want to leave you with, so if I say it up front, if I get really boring, just listen to this bit. The thing that I want to leave you with is the future of work is yours to build. And it's not something that's sort of happening to us. It's something that we get to create. And I think you as brilliant women in technology have a unique position to be building and shaping the future of work. So don't get it wrong, peeps. So 3 big shifts, I think, that are happening in the future of work, that are shaping the future of work. And I'll talk a bit about each of those. The first is skill scarcity. The second is the role that work plays in our lives. And the third, I just want to talk about some societal shifts and how they're sort of playing out in work. So the first thing is skill scarcity. In this country, and actually in the world, but I will just focus on the UK, but in this country, we do not have the skills that we need to drive our economy. Full stop, period. In May, for the first time ever since we've been looking at these things, there are now more job vacancies in the UK market than there are people who are unemployed. So what that means is, at a sort of workforce level, we don't have enough people. We don't have enough skills. And that is before you've even started to think about, we don't have enough skills in data and digital and technology, we don't have enough commercial people, we don't have enough project managers, we don't have the specialist deep skills. And by the way, we only have them in London, we don't have them in other parts of the UK. Right, so big strategic challenge number 1. And that is playing out in all kinds of ways. The first way, I think, is really in technology. So you guys will know better than me because you spend all your time working in technology. But one of the things that I observe is we've been saying for like 15 years, automation is going to fundamentally transform the world of work. And it's taking its time, isn't it? Why is it taking its time? Because people are really scared of it. What does it mean? What does it mean for my job? What does it mean for our organisation? God, change is hard, isn't it, right? Like, people like me spend all our time on it. It's hard. But in a world where you don't have the skills, you don't have enough people, automation and technology suddenly becomes the solution to a strategic workforce challenge rather than something that might be nice to have. So in a world where you can just go, if I don't automate or use technology or use all the tools that you guys are building, then I literally can't do the work that's got to get done. The business case really flips. So that's thing number 1, technology under skill scarcity. And then the other thing I think that's really interesting is that the power dynamic is starting to shift between employees and employers. So why are we all banging on about the war for talent and the great resignation and all the rest of it? It's because this fundamental shift in the labour market, which is there are more jobs than there are people to go around, which means that as an employee, you suddenly have just a little bit more power. And if you have scarce skills, like data and digital and technology, you are even more valuable and even more powerful. And so I guess the thing about skills scarcity is that it's just really tipped the balance. And then last point about skills is that in a world where we don't have enough skills, you want to have the skills that nobody else has. So I guess this is my sort of career advice bit, which is like keep your skills up to date, keep learning, keep doing, because they're going to be worth their weight in gold. So that's skill scarcity. Second big shift is, I think, the role that work is playing in our lives. So it used to be that you did some education and then you had a job and then you retired. And that is not the model of work that we have anymore. We now live in a world where we might have multiple careers, we might take career breaks, we might work and then learn and then learn and then work, or we might do them simultaneously, and we might juggle. We might have side hustles or multiple hustles, or we might have these things called hyphen careers, which is like you basically have like 3 jobs. And that is a fundamentally different like model of work to what we've been used to in the past. And I think about that in 2 dimensions. So I think about it as in like across your whole life, in the sort of 50 years that you're going to work, it doesn't look the same. And then it doesn't look the same in your micro. So in your week, it doesn't look the same because there's lots of different things going on. And I think, again, that shift, we're still coming to terms with, to be honest. And I think that the best employers are grappling with that. So lots of employers are starting to think about, could we have an offer for our people that isn't 9 till 5 in our office? Because that's not what people want anymore. And actually, COVID has helped us realise, if we hadn't worked it out already, which frankly, not that many employers had, but if you hadn't worked it out already, COVID taught you that actually it's possible to do quite a lot of stuff remotely. So having these different types of jobs, different types of careers, I think is something that has really started to mushroom in the last couple of years, and I think will continue. And I guess, what does that mean for you? It means that you get to choose. I mean, in some ways, it makes it harder, right? Because it's like, God, now I've got all these options. But again, back to what I said about skill scarcity, if you're living in a world where your employer doesn't have enough of you and you've got specialist skills, then the power's in your hands. So you can say, well, actually, I'd quite like to work a 3-day week, or I'd quite like to have a side hustle, or I'd quite like to have a term time contract so that I can, hang out with the kids in the summer or whatever. And I think all of these sort of pick and mix careers, build your own, are there for us. I did want to make a disclaimer actually on the role of work in our lives. Everything I've just said is quite a knowledge economy view. And what I mean by that is, quite often when we talk about the future of work, we talk about work as if everybody works in an office and works in the knowledge economy creating like high value stuff. And I think that we just have to remember that there are a lot of people who don't do that kind of work. There's a lot of people who work in factories or who work in operational work. So we just need to be thoughtful about when we say, you can pick and mix your career. Actually, if you're in perhaps low-skilled, low-pay work, working in a factory or whatever, like, you're still quite a long way away from like a pick and mix career and sort of build your own. So I think there's a big question for us and people who work in technology to think about the work that you're doing. How does that enable the future of work to kind of make it to all workplaces rather than just the knowledge economy workplaces? Does that make sense? Yes, good, thanks. Good. And then the sort of last bit of what I wanted to talk about is some big societal shifts that are going on. Because these are starting to play out in the workplace. So there's a few things I wanted to cover under here. So the first is diversity and inclusion. So we've shifted from diversity to inclusion and belonging, and that's really welcome. But I don't think we're there yet. It feels like we've started on a journey. We might have taken the first step. I feel like the first step was diversity. I feel like the second step's inclusion. It feels like there's probably quite a lot of steps left to go, right? But I think we need to lean into that. And one of the things that I think is interesting for women particularly, and women in technology, is to think about what your role is in creating a change movement rather than just yourself. Because if I was talking to you maybe 5, maybe 10 years ago, I would have been talking to you about what it's like to be the first, what it's like to be the only, and the role that you play as the first, as the only. I feel like there are fewer and fewer of you, thank goodness, who are playing that role in your organisation. So you're probably not the only, you're probably not the first, but you're probably one of a few. And that dynamic, I think, is really different. And I think one of the things that we collectively need to think about is when you're not the first and not the only, but you are one of the few, how do you work together to make the change happen in your organisation and in your industry in a way that creates change, that is part of the organisation, and makes change happen quickly? One of the things, there's a great quote from Madeleine Albright, who is the US Secretary of State, and she says, "There is a special place in hell for women who do not support other women." And I believe that to be really true and really important, and quite an important challenge, I think, to people who have started as the first, started as the only, and now are one of a few, who have got to think more strategically and more comprehensively about how they, as one of a few, create a group of people who are going to make change happen. And I guess all the things that you'll hear today, my encouragement is think about the power you already have for the others around you, not just downwards, not just sideways, but upwards too, and think about how you as a group can make change happen rather than you as an individual. This is a team sport, this change thing. And then the second thing I really want us to talk about in terms of the societal shift is that the big debates that we are having as a nation about what it means to live harmoniously with each other are starting to play out in the world of work. And so, for example, some of the debates that we've had, that we used to have in the pub or around the dinner table or with our friends, have now found their way into work. And that, again, has really shifted in the last 10 or 20 years. So let me give you some examples of that. So a couple of years ago, we were all talking about George Floyd and Floyd George, have I got that wrong? God. And how that impacted so many of us in our worlds. And we started to talk about it at work and what it meant for us at work and how we dealt with it at work and what that meant for our organisations. And thank God we did, because it was such a big deal and said so much about the society in which we live and the world in which we live and the world we want to be. And we wouldn't have had that conversation even 10 years ago. We wouldn't have had that conversation at work. It would have just been, there are things that happen outside work and things that happen inside work, and that's one of the things that happens outside work. And the conversations about, frankly, some of the stuff I was talking about diversity and about making additional arrangements for people to help different types of talent succeed in the workplace, those kinds of conversations are contested, and they are contested now in the workplace. We haven't quite got to the answer yet, and I think that's a process and not an event. And I think that's something we all need to lean into. And again, I don't think the answer's clear. I think it's a process. And I guess my encouragement on that is that we all lean into those conversations, because if you go back to what I was saying about work playing a different role in our lives, and being not just a place I go, but a thing I do and a group of people I collaborate with, like that, it feels really important to get that right. And I think, as I say, we're just at the beginning of that conversation. And then I guess before I take some questions, I guess I'll just end where I started, really, which is to say future of work is not really in the future. Future of work is here, it's now. It is really exciting and is changing super fast. And we all have the power to change it because, as I was saying, the power has shifted so that people who are employed have got much more voice, much more power, particularly if you've got scarce skills. And we're reshaping what this whole thing looks like, so you guys can build it. I think it's really exciting. So I'm going to take some questions. Joanne has got the microphone. Got plenty of time for questions. I'll take them in threes, so that if you ask a really difficult question, I don't have to look stupid. Yes, and then talk, because yes, great, thank you. Oh, you probably don't, yeah.
No?
Yeah, that's on, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So I'm just interested across the organisations you're working with, the whole back to the office thing, and where that is and what you're seeing and your current view is on companies that are getting that right.
Great, I'll take the question. There was another question at the back. I'll take that one as well. And then there's one down here.
Thanks for that, Josie. I guess just a question around in your work as well, what you've seen as women going to more senior roles, what they're expecting companies to provide them with in terms of how they work. And even maybe not just women, but parents and people with children and caring responsibilities. How has it shifted in your experience?
And then was there a question here? You look like you were going, yes.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to check you weren't adjusting your hair.
No. This is a follow-on from this lady's question over here as well with regards to the return to work. So we've had the disruption of COVID, lockdown, etc., where I think I think a lot of people have been more aware of just how much women pick up the caring responsibilities. So as we go back to work, what can we do to ensure that women don't just reassume those responsibilities? Because that's where, I work in D&I, so that's where we're going to be hit when we start to see people coming back to work and then them going, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, great questions, all great questions. So on return to the office, we've seen a massive spectrum, haven't we? So we've seen some people who have been like, right, that's over now, back you come. And their workforces are going, what? We've just demonstrated to you that we can do this. I think on the other hand, we've also seen some employers who went, oh, guys, you seem to be working fine, get on with it, and then feel like they've lost something. So it feels like there's got to be a happy medium and a halfway house. The thing that I find surprising is how badly some organisations, frankly, are managing what they call flexible working, because it sounds like it's not that flexible to me. So they say, oh, we're going to work really flexibly. You have to be in the office for 3 days a week and you can choose which days they are, but they can't be Monday or Friday. And it has to be between these hours and those hours. And I feel like those organisations are doing quite badly out of this, because what starts to happen is employees start to have this sort of competing needs problem where they go, well, I've got to pick up my kids I've got to leave at 3 because I need to pick up my kids at 3:30, which is more important than you because you just want to go to the gym, but you don't have any dependent, and that kind of my needs, your needs, work needs just feels like the same conversation but in a different place. The organisations that I think are doing it much better are those who are embracing flexibility in the round and thinking about flexibility in multi-dimensions. So when we talk about flexibility, we say there are 5 dimensions. I'm probably now not going to remember all of them, but the dimensions of flexibility are the hours you work, the place you work, the contract you work, the responsibilities you have, and one other that I can't quite remember right now. But if you think about all of the different permutations, this is where you get to sort of build your own. And then last point on back to the office, the other thing I think we have learned is that the office as a convening space is really important. And certainly at EY, we have seen office use increase voluntarily. So we've sort of, in the main, not mandated, but encouraged, and we've done loads of stuff to sort of change our working space so that it's much more collaborative, because so people can come in and collaborate, and if you need to get your head down, you can do it elsewhere. I think that most people have recognised that's really important, and I think encouraging that rather than mandating that has got to be the way forward. Oh gosh, now I've forgotten your question. So there was a question about impact on women, and then your question was about women. Yes, great, thank you. Sorry, I should have written that down. So again, I think that we have moved a bit from thinking about diversity in like in silos to diversity as a whole, and starting to think about what is the offer that we can give all people rather than just you if you're at a particular life stage, because actually who is to know when you have an issue, when things crop up in your life. So actually I've got a colleague today who's off, a guy who works with me, he messaged me this morning and said, I'm so sorry, I'm going to take an emergency day today, I've got a crisis with one of my teenagers. Right, that sort of, it's really important that he's able to take that time, and I would never have predicted that would be the thing, so I think we need to look at it in the round. So, you know, all life stages, all things that might happen to all of us at any point in our lives or careers, and it's the sort of thing that you don't think about and don't care about until you need it, and then by God you really need it. And then last point on that, which sort of links to your point, is shared parental leave, I think, is like the most important thing, because, well, from personal experience, I've got 2 kids. My first baby missed shared parental leave, and it was just really hard to make the juggle work. Second baby, we had shared parental leave. My husband took 6 months off. I popped back into work, and it worked really, really well for us. Not only that, but I think that it starts to set that expectation about parenting being a real partnership really early, because if you have a model where the woman takes off the year or whatever at the beginning, then that you're always deviating from that. Whereas if you have a model where anyone can do it, then you've got more options and more of it. I think also there is a really important discussion and debate for us to have as a society that's both in work and out of work, which is about what is the role, like fatherhood, fathers at work, men, what it means to be a dad, how they juggle, how we support men who juggle. Because actually, I think we have fought, we've fought some real battles, and I know that there are many dads who are facing some of the battles that women faced like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and they need help navigating. We've been navigating it for years, but you know, they do need help navigating some of that stuff. And I think we, as employers, as colleagues, also need to make that okay and make it equitable as well. Take some more questions. Yes, we have 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Hi there, thanks, that was really interesting. It's interesting we say about that we've got more skills, more jobs needing skills than we've got people unemployed. It's just funny because I guess it doesn't feel like that. You know, when you read the press and you have your own, you know, people around you. like, for example, I host a Ukrainian lady, and she has been looking for a job in tech for ages, and her English has got a lot better, but she can't seem to get a job. And I think it's partly the English, but then I think about, the fact that we're about to go into a recession potentially. We just don't seem to have got it right in terms of the fact that we have got school leavers, who don't have the right skills, and yet we've got loads of jobs. And I'm just wondering if you've got any views on that, and if EY is doing anything around that in terms of bridging that gap, because we definitely have a lot of unemployed people who could be reskilled, I guess. That's my question.
Yeah, great question. And then, lady with the blonde hair.
First of all, thanks for the talk. It's awesome. My question is about the flexibility. That's something you mentioned. Realistically, most of the companies still work around 9 to 6 and those surrounding hours. Is there something that we can do to change that, and from a personal level, or is there something that we can start talking about, or what the conversation should look like to change that?
Thank you. And for me, I think it fits with the flexible working theme, but I was just keen to hear your views on the 4-day working week, and do you think that something like that will happen in the main in the UK or elsewhere, actually?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I've been watching the 4-day week with interest. Yeah, interesting, actually, because we're having a discussion internally about, could we make that work? Could our clients make that work? Yeah. So on 4-day week, I think there's some really interesting evidence building on how that works. For me, I would want to think about it as the question for me is whether it helps flexibility or hinders flexibility, because not all of us want the Friday. Some of us might want to do the hours compressed so that we can do the school run or look after our parents or something like that. So I guess I think the puzzle is, how do you get different people's flexibility, add that all up? Like, how does the team work? And I think probably for different organisations and different teams, they need to work it through together. But yeah, I think we'll find our way there. I hope so. On the gap between skills and work, massive gap between skills and work, and it does seem to be a bit of a paradox. But I think that's exciting for our labour market, because because we've now got more vacancies than we have unemployed people. That hasn't been the case previously. So employers have just been able to be quite lazy and not bother reaching into people who are unemployed or people who have additional needs, or just that little bit further from the labour market, whether that's, people coming out of, ex-offenders, or people who've had mental health problems, or people who want to work more flexibly or whatever, or people who need a bit more help with their English or whatever. Actually, it's going to encourage employers to get ahead, to get going on thinking more creatively about where they get their talent from. So I'm actually hopeful about that. And there's loads and loads to be done. Similarly, with people coming out of university, we all know there's a lot what we call the last mile problem of the difference between how you pop out of university and how you're work ready. Lots of work to do there. And then there's a question about flexibility and where that's going. I think it depends on the actual work. Like, what's the work that needs to be done? Because there are many jobs, there are many things that actually don't have to happen between the hours of 9 and 6. Like, why did I need to think about these slides between 9 and 6? Like, I didn't think about what I was going to say between 9 and 6. I did it over a cup of tea at about 8 o'clock at night. Why would my employment contract say that? So I do think what we all need to do is just push the boundaries a bit of why do they have to be like that? Why is that our way? That seems to be our way because we've always done it like that. Wow. Now's the time for change, isn't it? So I think I'm running out of time, aren't I, Kate? I'm out. I'm done. Perfect. All right, so I'm out of time. Thank you so much for coming. I'll let you back out into the land of mince pies and tea. Thanks very much.